Peeps, thank you. You're in the hundreds. Wow. Everyone, my name is Oscar. Thank you so much for tuning in. You probably don't know who I am, but I am one of the 5 co-founders of Epidemic. I'm also our CEO for ever, basically. And I'm thrilled to be joining you here today again. This is the 3rd time that we're doing this. And previously we've had the privilege to talk to creators in LA. We've been speaking both to Justine and to Marcus, who were content creators. The week after that, we spoke to one of our wonderful artists, Megan Wooford, also based in LA, and she ended things by playing some lovely music for us as well. And today I'm thrilled because today I'm going to be talking to fantastic storytellers, creators. I'd use the word travelers as well because, wow, I'm going to needless to say, they've traveled quite a bit. Without further ado, I'm going to try and see if I can hook up with Kara and Nate. And what we're trying to do here is we're trying to use our platform as Epidemic to offer creators and people in the industry who are struggling with COVID-19 to get a voice, to get you to influence us, the larger community. We're here to see how we can help, how we can learn. We're constantly blown away by the amount of creativity that you also pour endlessly into your content, to your stories. We ourselves are seeing huge amounts of our music being used more than ever. We're seeing genres like hopeful, romantic, peaceful, uplifting thrive like never before. And I truly do think that throughout this sort of social distancing, what we can do is come together and offer some digital solace, some digital togetherness. And without further ado, I'm going to try my techie fingers and see if I can get connect us. Let's see. Hey, Karen, Nate.
Hey,
Hey, how are you?
We're great. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Snuck into the office here because I knew I was going to lose the internet fight vis-a-vis my kids. They always win, so you don't want to engage in a battle you can't win. But more important, how are you and where are you?
we are doing great. We are in the woods and close to our hometown in Nashville, Tennessee.
In a log cabin in the middle of nowhere, very isolated.
Wow, so you're really socially distancing.
Yes.
So something tells me though that you haven't been there for long, right? I'm assuming that the way you got there must have been something quite recent. But so before we dive into that, can you maybe start by telling the viewers a little bit about yourselves? I know that tons of people who are tuning in know exactly who you are, but for the few who maybe don't.
Yeah, so we're Kara and Nate, and we have been traveling the world full time for the last 4 years. YouTube is our main thing. We did daily vlogs for a while. Now we have kind of buy or try weekly vlogs, and we had a goal of visiting 100 countries, and we recently achieved that goal this past December, which was really exciting. And yeah, we're just...
In January, we marked off our 7th continent.
Yes.
Wow. Wow. Okay, so I'm going to want to throw myself into that because I know people want to hear more about it. But before we do, you're currently in the US, you're in the cabin. That's not your normal place, right? So if we rewind, how did you end up there? Just walk us through how you got there, because you were in Asia quite recently, right? When pretty much the entire world just changed. Tell us about that.
So we were in the Philippines whenever the coronavirus was announced to be a pandemic and things were starting to shut down. We were on a very remote island, and essentially we had 48 hours to get back to the capital city of Manila before it locked down, which meant that no transportation was going to be coming in or out. And so international travelers could still leave from Manila. But if you couldn't get back to Manila, then there was a chance of being trapped in the Philippines indefinitely. So
Wow.
we made a crazy sprint back to Manila. At that point, we kind of had to make a quick decision on where to go. We decided instead of flying back across the world, we'd go to Singapore, which was only a 3-hour flight away, and they had seemed to do a good job with handling the pandemic thus far. So we ended up in Singapore in self-quarantine for almost a month. And then after we were pretty content to stay there indefinitely because our life has been on the road for the last 4 years. We applied for a visa extension that got denied. About the same day, we got an email from the U.S. Embassy saying there aren't going to be any repatriation flights. If you want to get back to the U.S. over the next 4 days, there's 21 commercial flights left. You need to be on one of those.
It was a stressful travel day. Like, I was convinced that something was going to get canceled along the way, or we were going to get stuck somewhere because we'd come from Asia, and it ended up being a pretty smooth day. I won't spoil much because the vlog is going to come out this day.
Okay. But
Yeah.
it was basically an ultimatum, right? So get home or get lost. So that was wow, intense.
Yeah, so it was, honestly though, I think we're grateful for the time that when we did travel back, because watching like a lot of social media around when people were traveling home when we were leaving the Philippines, with people being like packed into the airports like sardines and waiting in lines for 6 hours because everybody was panicking trying to get home. We kind of had the exact opposite experience where we were like the only ones in the airport, which was pretty crazy.
Yeah. So I would say that, and anytime that I travel, I would say that sort of I travel with my wife and kids, and it's basically chaos. People are all over the place. But I feel comfortable saying that if there are any people who I'm not worried about whether or not they have traveling down, it's when I hear you guys talking about it. And so could you maybe sort of just to kick us off, can you talk a little bit, so why traveling? How did it start? So what was the spark, and sort of how did it snowball into the sort of this global success that it is now?
Global success. That sounds very
That's your lives. Come on.
Honestly, if you looked at who we were and what we were doing before this was our life, you never would have thought that this is where we would end up, including us. Like, this still seems crazy to us, but we got married in 2013 and had traveled internationally like almost none. Nate planned our honeymoon to Belize, and as cheesy as it sounds, like totally got the travel bug on our honeymoon. And so we started figuring out ways to travel more from there. And we eventually got to this point where we loved travel so much, and we like looked at our lives and we thought, it'll never get easier to travel more. Like, the further we get into our careers, like if we start a family, like if we're ever going to do something crazy, it has to be right now. And literally, we were sitting at Dairy Queen one night and we decided we were going to travel for 1 year. Like, we were going to save up for 1 year and leave on a 1-year trip before life got too serious. And
the goal at that time wasn't to start a successful YouTube channel. That was like very secondary. We planned to go travel a year before we actually left, and we decided to start a YouTube channel a few weeks before we left, just like to document the trip.
So it was very passion driven, right? It wasn't sort of planned. It was more like, this is what we need to do right now.
100%. The YouTube channel was a way to document the trip. I think in the back of our minds, like, if it turned into something great, but if nothing else, the worst we had to lose by putting the effort into this is that we have these videos of our trip to look back on at the end of this 1 year.
But so, Carrie, you mentioned like the 1 year initially. When did you realize that this was maybe not just a 1 year thing, but a multi-year lifestyle kind of thing?
Yeah. So when we planned that 1 year, we didn't even know if we would make it 1 month or 6 months. Like, we had never traveled for more than a week or two before, and we had never been together 24/7 for that long. Like, there were things that were so new about it that we went into it feeling very like, we'll see what happens. And about 6 months in, we were on a hike in South Africa, and we had a really serious conversation. Like, this cannot end at the end of this year.
This is
like, I want you to make this last as long as possible. And at that point, YouTube was kind of the best thing that we had going. We'd really fallen in love with documenting our travels on YouTube. It was something that like really like enhanced our travels in a way. Like, at first I thought maybe it would take away from it, but we loved having something to get up and like work for every day. I guess like we're kind of workaholics in that way. Like, maybe if we didn't have the YouTube channel, we would have felt like we weren't being productive enough. But I don't know. We were loving it. So we're like, okay, 6 months in, let's put everything we have into YouTube and see how long we can make this last. And that's when we decided that we wanted to try to visit 100 countries together, which
I think that was like, okay, if we're going to keep going, we need like a goal or something. We don't just want to be floating around with no
random.
And so, yeah, even at the time, it felt totally crazy. We said, let's set this goal and see what happens.
Okay, and so we're going to get back to that goal. I'm not going to sort of spoil it in terms of how, sort of what and when and how it happened. But having traveled as much as you, I just have to ask the question. So where you're at now, is that home, or have you redefined the set? What does home mean for you even?
We have no idea. We got rid of our apartment and all of our stuff at the beginning of that first year, planning on coming home eventually. Like
as in selling all your belongings?
No, so
my uncle owns a storage, like a complex of storage units, and so technically we have all of our belongings or some of our belongings in a storage unit. But now we hate going back there and looking at this. We don't want any of it. We've just been too lazy to move it out.
If we had known that this would become a 4+ year journey, we probably would have it all. But like, we were freshly married, we had all these wedding gifts. Like we're not selling all this stuff.
I love that toaster. That toaster speaks to me.
Exactly.
Really nice.
Yeah. Still unopened sitting in the storage.
Yeah,
unit.
exactly. So anytime we came back that first year, we just stayed at our parents' houses because there was no use in us having a place sitting empty for that year. And then when we never came back, we still never had a home. And so now when we do come home, it's such a short, usually not right now, but such a short amount of time that we like staying with our friends and family because it's time that we get to spend with them. And so being home right now, like we're in our hometown in this Airbnb for now.
Which feels totally weird.
It's very rare to be here for more than a week or two. And usually it's just for a wedding or a family reunion. You know, there's a reason. And so being without anything going on is very strange.
Yeah, I can imagine. So I have so many things that sort of I want to talk about, but there are so many comments coming up talking about your personalities and your positivism, and people get so much out of watching your videos. So again, a little bit of a cheesy question, but so traveling the way you've done, how has that maybe affected your personalities? Have you become people who are more sort of problem solvers, more open-minded? Do you think that you would be different people if you weren't on this journey as opposed to where you are now?
100%.
I think we've both said this before, but we look back and we thought that we were open-minded before we started traveling. I mean, we come from like a very conservative, like the South of the US, who I guess like normally to most of the world wouldn't be considered open-minded. We felt like being here, we were kind of more towards the open-mindedness. But the last 4 years, I think like we've changed as people, especially as far as like being open-minded and just like, as far as our mindset goes, when you've traveled as much as we have and you've seen as many things as we have, as far as like the amount that people have, you know, and the conditions that other people live in different countries, I think, you know, we're very grateful. And it's like, you know, we kind of realized that we kind of won the lottery being born where we were born for a lot of people. And I think no matter how bad our life gets, we can be really grateful because, like, you know, we've seen real poverty, I think.
Yeah, and one thing kind of a blessing and a curse is we do have like a highlight reel of our life on the internet, and like we go back and watch some of our early vlogs, like Nate said, where we thought we were super open-minded and flexible, and I'm like, I'm a spoiled brat, like I went wrong. Attitude, and I think if I didn't have that to look back on, I would still think that we've always been this way. But the truth is,
you can see how much we've changed.
Yeah, we've changed a whole lot. So it's kind of cool to see that change.
It doesn't surprise me at all. I think that your humbleness and your willingness and your ability to change it's so contagious, and I think that's why people just appreciate being part of your journeys, both the journey but also like the metaphor for like change and stuff, right? We met about 2 years ago when you were traveling through Europe and you were in Sweden, and I love to really think of you as maybe the most sort of globe-trotter-esque people out there. and tying it into like a little bit of a serious note, we were talking about COVID-19 a little bit. Did you see a progression? So because you were traveling so much, you were mentioning you were in Asia. Did you see this escalating, happening, and was it on your radar, or were you a bit like myself and us, sort of isolated? In my case, in Europe, some in the US, other viewers all around the world, and then suddenly, wham! It hit you, or did you have a sense of what was going on?
I think we're both very optimistic people, and so I think we kind of saw signs of it and didn't necessarily want to like believe that it was going to affect the whole world. So at the beginning of the year, we went on a cruise to Antarctica.
Wow. Okay.
And so that was marking off our 7th continent. And before that cruise, we started getting emails like, if you've been to mainland China in the last 14 days, you're not allowed on this cruise ship. But it seemed like at least in January and even like early February when we got on the cruise, it was really just a concern for China and people who had been to China. I mean, we got like our temperatures taken going on the cruise ship to make sure. But it felt like it was very isolated in different pockets of the world. And even when we were going to the Philippines in like very early March, it was like we avoided flying through South Korea because they were seeing some cases. And then you had China, and then you had Italy. And it was like, there were a few hot spots, but it still didn't feel like a global pandemic until mid-March.
Yeah, that's definitely when it hit us. I mean, when we had to run for it to Manila to get on that flight. And I mean, looking back, it's like, oh, we probably should have taken it seriously earlier. But in the moment,
but like, I know.
It just didn't seem like something that needed to affect our travels that much. And now, obviously.
I think you speak for all of us when sort of we didn't see it coming at that sort of pace and at that scale. Let me flip for a little bit, and because I think that a lot of people are super curious, both from a productivity and a creativity perspective. Again, I think it's fair to say that you people travel more than everyone I know collectively together, and you get to see things and experience things, and maybe that's an important part in your creative process. You're now in your Airbnb cabin, socially distancing, hardcore. Can you talk us through, are you more creative, more productive, less so? So what's going on from an output and sort of up here perspective?
Yeah. So honestly, we've gotten in this routine the last year or two where we travel really hard, really quickly, make a ton of content, and then we'll take 1 week, 2 weeks, even 3 sometimes to literally do what we're doing right now. Like, we call them workations, where we book an Airbnb wherever we are or wherever we want to go to settle down for a little bit. And we just kind of use it as like a resting time in a way. Like, it's kind of our time off, but like all we do is sit on our computers, edit the content, plan the travel, work on our side hustles. I mean, it's just complete. We wake up in the mornings, we make a cup of coffee, and we sit at our desk all day long.
We've been training for 4 years, is what she's trying to say.
But what did you call them, Kara? There was a name for it. Workation?
Workations.
I love it.
It's a vacation from travel, but we're working. So like, it feels like resting because we're not moving, but at the same time we're working.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the best.
When he like forced us to have a workation that wasn't on the original itinerary, we're like, okay, this is fine. We'll take the next 2 weeks. We'll do what we always do. And then when we got basically kicked out of Singapore, we came here and we're kind of doing it again. And we're at that point right now where normally we're ready to go.
Yeah, we should be like hitting the road again and going out and making new content, but we're kind of having to live with this.
Yeah.
But so basically what you're telling us is that this is a different situation for you, but it's up until now, it's still quite similar to your workations. So it's something that you do, but I guess the next phase is sort of where are your heads at in terms of planning? So you've geared your lives, your days around traveling and being part of the world at large. That's now sort of not an option. So what are you looking at sort of doing instead, and where are your heads at? So how long in advance are you planning, and what are you thinking?
So yeah, I mean, when you look at the situation, we could go in with the mindset of like, oh no, what do we do? We can't travel. I mean, that's all we've done for 4 years. All of our content is international travel, flying, boats, like always in public places with other people. Like, we don't know how to make content that's not that. And so, I mean, I'd be lying if I didn't say that, like, when this first, like, when we realized like this is not going away, it was scary. And we had this like fear of like, is our channel over? Like, how long is this going to last? And YouTube rewards good behavior. Like, when you post consistently and
yep, cadence is important, right? Yeah.
And don't do that, like, you kind of get punished. And so we're like, hey, do we just make content just to make it, like stuff that we're not excited about or proud of? And we really had to take a minute and just say, like, we need to take this time and do something that we usually don't have time to do, or make excuses that we don't have time to do. And we actually have a lot of things that we have like on the back burner that we always say we don't have time for. And Nate,
but
really,
let's dive into that part then, Kara, because I think that's, people are super curious about. So traveling being this huge part, you use the word side hustle, which I love. Maybe highlight some of the things, because you can't travel now. What are the other options from a business perspective that you guys are looking with? I've seen some of them, which I like really love, where you're teaching editing and stuff like that. Walk us through a little bit your thinking around those things.
Yeah, so I have a course that I created online about how I make vlogs, which was created in another one of our workations a year or two ago. Like, it was a week in a hotel, and I was like, what can I do at this time? And I created this course, and it's been so fun. You know, for people who were just like me, I had no idea how to edit or make a vlog when we first started. So I was able to show people, like, I didn't go to school for this. I'm not a professional. Like, here's exactly what I do, and you can do it too. And Nate has a course as well.
Yeah, so I think we've both created courses around our expertise. So Kara with editing, and I think what was really cool for her is that, like, it took me a lot of convincing to get her to create her editing course, because, you know, there's plenty of people out there who would maybe be considered better editors, but I think that people want to see her creative they've been watching us, they want to see her creative process. And by her kind of like getting in that mindset with like, okay, if I could watch some of my favorite, like if I could watch over the shoulder of some of my favorite creators of exactly how they created their videos, like that would be something that would be super valuable to me.
Yeah.
And so that's what she's created with her editing course. And then mine is a little more like US focused. So in the US, there's this thing called travel hacking, where you can sign up for travel credit cards and get points and travel for really cheap. And that's how we travel for like our first year. So before we left, we had almost 2 million frequent flyer miles. And it was like signing up for credit cards, and like it turns into this whole hobby. And so in the beginning, a lot of people were asking, like, how are you able to afford this? And so I created a course on how we were able to do that.
Okay, that's amazing, because that's one of the things that we've been picking up when we've been talking to creators throughout the world, that in times like this, when we're looking at quarantine and we can't do the normal stuff, people tend to invest in themselves. So your courses, education, getting inspiration, and so you're really seeing that come through as well, which I think is amazing, right?
Yeah, I think there's such an opportunity for people right now, because so in our journey, what happened was we were just trying to make enough money to stay on the road for the first 2.5 years. And so what that meant for us was creating these side hustles. So Kara's course, my course, creating an email list where we could market stuff, and, you know, like putting all of these revenue streams in place that were really small. And then when our channel kind of started to take off, it was crazy how fast everything grew. So it's not just like our channel grew, but it was like all these other revenue streams that we had created in the past had all started growing at the rate of our channel. So it was like this 5x growth instead of just our channel growing. And I think there's an opportunity for people to kind of do that now, like put these things in place to where when things become more normalized, you know, they're in a good place for everything to kind of start trending upwards.
Okay. So look, we're at thousands of people watching now, and I think the advice you're giving now is priceless. So I really want to encourage people to sort of hit your websites, obviously your channels, because there's so much information, and I think inspiration for everyone. This is exactly what sort of we were hoping to be able to get to. Have you noticed sort of any shift in your, I think people want to know about sort of yourselves. What do you watch and consume, and sort of where we're at now in the world? Are you looking at more content, less content, different kinds of content? What's that like?
Yeah.
All of the above.
Yeah.
Let us know.
We definitely consume a lot of YouTube in our normal lives, our normal routine. But since we've been self-isolating and quarantined, we found ourselves watching, first of all, like just more longer form things. You know, normally it's just like quick YouTube vlogs, whatever we have time for before we fall asleep because we're exhausted at the end of the day. But now we're watching kind of longer form things that we don't usually make time for, but we just realized this recently, they're all like stories or documentaries about really inspiring people. And I don't know if I've just been drawn to that because like we want to be inspired right now, or if that's just what we enjoy, but it's been cool to see like what people are capable of. And I felt very like invincible, like watching these. We're like, oh, we can do anything, like nothing can slow us down. And it's been really cool.
And it's stuff that's been like travel related. It's just been like, how far can you push the human body? Like, you know, like ultra marathons or climbing. And it's been cool just to see like what the human body's capable of.
Okay, so speaking of capabilities, this is maybe the worst transition in Instagram history, but but you set yourselves a goal. You wanted to reach 100 countries, and in a magical sort of series of events, you hit 1 million subscribers just as you hit 100 countries. So crazy! Congratulations! So tell us about that. So how did that? So because it was like this incredible momentum snowball thing, right?
We're convinced that someone at YouTube was just and like waiting, and then as soon as 100 country, they just said, gave us enough to celebrate.
It was pretty crazy. So our 100th country was Fiji that we hit in December. And so it was already just kind of like this surreal moment being there. And we had decided, you know, instead of filming a series of videos, we're going to film like one video, and then we're going to take some time kind of like to ourselves to reflect on this whole trip. And then while we were there, we had a series that we had already filmed, but we were publishing while we were there, and it started doing so much better than we expected. Our like we had projected, we hope to hit 1 million subscribers. We hosted a party in Nashville for hitting 100 countries, and that was like mid-January. So we hoped to hit 100 subscribers by mid-January, and then it came as a complete surprise that it happened mid-December when we were in Fiji.
We were shocked. Wow. It was awesome.
Wow. I think the great things happen to great people. I have just 2 more questions, right? So the first one is 100 countries, I'm sure 1,000 adventures, some of them sort of more crazy than others. Are there any things that you can share that stick out in terms of like wow, and sort of cultures or episodes or sort of things, anything that really stick out as special memories?
I'll go if you.
I definitely, go ahead.
So I think Bhutan, I think there's always a recency bias to our travels where it's like, and Bhutan was at the end of last year, but especially from a cultural perspective, you know, coming into a country that not necessarily a lot of people travel to, and having a local guide who took us under his wing and took us to his family's house, and we got to, you know, see how they live off the land and learn how his mom cooks. And
definitely one of the most like authentic experience as a whole. Like it wasn't just one authentic experience. It just felt like from the moment we got there till the time we left, we were just living local life, and we loved that. We also just went to which is like, I mean,
so which one as well?
Antarctica.
Oh, okay. Wow.
I mean, it just stands out because it's Antarctica. Like there's no other way to explain it. Like it was another world.
It's like a frozen safari is the best way I can.
Yes.
Crazy. I've been to a safari and that was magical, and the frozen safari just sounds like mind-blowing. Yeah. Which leads me to my last question. So you mentioned all these epic places, 7 continents. You've seen Bhutan, you've seen Antarctica. Where do you go from there? So what could sort of possibly be a next plan, next step? Do you have any ideas you want to share with us?
So when we made our 100-country goal, it was just kind of this crazy number that we thought was not possible.
It was a nice round number.
It was a nice round number. But deep down, we're like, is this really possible? Like, maybe we can get close. You know, like, it was our goal, but we really, if you looked at our life and our finances and our views at the time, like, you just never would have thought that. And that decision has been such a game changer. Like, having something that we're working towards has made this journey so much more exciting and has pushed us out of our comfort zones in so many ways. And we went to places that weren't on our bucket list, but like just to get, you know, the country count, but ended up falling in love with the place. And, you know, places have become some of our favorite cities in the world. And who knows if we ever would have made ourselves go there if we weren't trying to hit that goal. So when this year started, we really wanted that next goal. Like, what can we do that'll make us do things out of our comfort zone that, you know, will just keep pushing us? And honestly, we hadn't figured that out yet. And so we just decided we were going to keep traveling and not just make a goal because we needed one, and just kind of wait until something really struck us as like, this is what it needs to be. And being in quarantine has really given us a lot of time to talk about that and think about that. And we do have some ideas. They're not public yet, but
I think we're starting to think about like what's actually possible coming up in the next year. And I think what's most likely to come back the fastest is going to be domestic travel and travel that's around that's in the outdoors. So we've got a pretty fun, like next really big goal that we think we can pull off, you know, whether the world's, as long as the world gets back to like 50% normalcy.
Yeah.
So, but we're not 100% committed yet, so we don't want to reveal it. But I think a few things we've talked about in here with like physical endurance and the human body, and domestic travel. Those are.
I love it. I love that. So this hasn't happened before. I'm seeing the views just going up and up and up. People want more and more. I'm still going to call it here. Karen, Nate, this was amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your advice, your life, your positivity. Everyone watching, I can really recommend obviously subscribing to your channels, but also diving into your universe, the courses you mentioned, the stuff you offer, the side hustles, the sort of traveling vacations where you take a vacation from traveling, which in itself just blows my mind. Thank you so much for sharing and sort of being part of sort of helping us get to a better place than where the world is now.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Yes, thank you so much.
Cool. Take care of yourselves, everyone. And so if you're watching, we're doing a number of different things here on Instagram, including a competition. So you have time, I guess, I hope, I think, and you definitely have the creativity. So give us what you got. Karen, Nate, thanks very much. Take care of yourselves.
Thank you, Oscar. Yeah.
Ciao. Where did Epidemic begin? And the answer is here.